Hello, Mr. Murley. I can see you. Can you hear me, Larry? I think you're on mute.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. There we go.
Great, thank you.
Hello, this is Crystal. It's nice to see you.
I'm Larry Burley. I'm a friend of Jack's, a Facebook friend anyway, a fan of Jack's.
A fan of Jack's. That is two of us. That is two of us in the fan club.
Yeah. I read his book, Coming When We Came Home, back, some time ago, years ago. And he came out with this new one that he's just written. And I did a beta read on it here for a while back. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's just an excellent story. And my Vietnam story is I'm probably the oldest Vietnam vet you ever met. I was in Vietnam in 1962, the first half of 1962. And so I love being with these guys and everything, but I don't know anything about their war, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Things change so much. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's nice to meet you. I'm Crystal. My dad served in Phu Loy from 70 to 71 with the 128th Assault Helicopter Company, which was a neighbor to Jack's, what do I want to say? Abel.
Yeah.
Group.
And there's our hero. Hi, Jack.
I see you, Jenny. You're on mute, Jack.
There we go. How's that?
There we go. Yeah.
Loud and clear. There we go.
How's
Mr.
everybody?
Murley and I were just chatting away. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It was a good day today, warm. We have a lot of smoke from all the way from Canada and California here. And so it's a little hard to breathe when I'm outside, but otherwise it was a good day. The nice weather and everything is doing well.
Wonderful. Hello, Vicki. I see Vicki just joined. I saw her for just a second. It's nice to see you, Vicki. Thank you for joining us.
She's on mute.
Yeah, she's on mute.
Hey,
That's
Larry,
okay.
how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, Jack. Reading and writing.
What's that?
Reading and writing.
Not necessarily in that order.
Not necessarily, no, not always. Where do you live, Jack?
I'm in Denver, North Carolina, and that's just a little bit northwest of Charlotte.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I heard you say, and I remember seeing today that they are having a lot of smoke from Oregon, I guess. Oregon, yeah. Yes. We're just out of Houston. And,
okay. Well, you've had your share of natural disasters, haven't you?
It is a natural disaster. The whole area is a natural disaster.
Yeah.
I'm just about 2 hours north of you, Larry, in Lufkin.
Oh, are you?
Yes.
Yeah, a girl that works for us in the Falls. She's from up in Lufkin. She's a school teacher up there somewhere.
I see.
Yeah.
Vic, we see that Vic has joined us.
Hey, Vic.
Katie, is that you?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Katie. I so wish that you were here to moderate the meeting, Katie. Or I guess you call it a meeting, chat meeting. Give us a thumbs up if the move is going well. Very good. Katie is moving from Minnesota to Connecticut. I hope I said that correctly.
Oh,
Oh my God.
little less
You did.
snow.
There you are.
Hey, yep, here I am. Yeah, no, I think we're in Ohio right now.
Well, the
Okay.
weather looks good.
It's 70 in the car.
Car knows how to regulate that, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's about 189 in the shade here in East Texas.
Wow. Yeah. It's supposed to be worse this weekend.
That's what my husband said. He said, I'm going to roast on Monday. The weather forecast said next Monday was really expected to be super hot. 100, not the heat index, just the temperature.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ugh.
But the first this year, we haven't had this so far this year. We haven't down here.
Hi, Pat.
Hello, Pat. Is that one of yours, Jack?
Yeah, that's my lovely wife.
Oh, hello, Miss Pat. Thank you for joining us.
I think you have to connect to your audio.
It says
Now
on
you're
my
on
side
mute.
that she got connected. Yeah.
She's connected, but she has a mute. It's on mute. Yes. I can hear you from downstairs, but I can't hear you on the computer.
I can hear her in the background.
I hope that stays there.
She just said, that's okay. We don't need to hear her.
That's great. Well, I have to confess, my heart is on the golf course this evening. My 12-year-old is playing his championship super match for his junior PGA league this evening. They teed off at 5 o'clock.
Oh, no.
So,
Wow, congratulations.
well, thank you. My husband is giving me the blow by blow here. So
Oh,
they've
good.
won
Good
the
luck.
first 3 holes.
He won the first 3 holes?
He
Woo!
did. There you are, Miss Pat.
Yeah, there I am.
Very good. This is his first time to play golf officially. Now he's played, golf for several years, but this is his first time to actually play golf.
Wow.
But he's excited and he's enjoying it.
It's so funny. It's showing me up as Jenny, which is a friend who lets me use her.
You're using her Zoom.
I must be.
Oh,
Yes.
Everybody will mute.
okay. Nobody needs to hear me anyway. So that's
So I'm
good.
not Jenny, I'm Jack.
Right. I'm Katie and you're Jenny. So let's
Hey,
see.
Jack, do you ever go to the North Carolina Renaissance Festival?
No. Mm-mm.
My son is one of the jousters out there. He's one of the star jousters. that's been
Oh.
out there. Except for last year, they weren't there. But yeah, he's a knight in shining armor.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
cool.
There's so many things that we still have to do here at we're working on,
And we lost a year.
yeah, we
right?
lost the whole year, so.
Yes,
Oh.
very true.
Absolutely.
All right, well, it's 6:30. We can get started if everyone's ready. Say
Okay.
hello. I can see Renee, Terry, Leslie, Jennifer, Vic. Let's see, I see Katie and Miss Pat and Larry. And there may be others, but I'm kind of a stranger in a strange land here, poking around in Katie's Zoom portal here. Anyway, but thank you so much, Jack, for joining us on behalf of the sons and daughters of the Vietnam War. We appreciate your time very, very much in spending with us. And I will just tell just a quick snippet about why I thought that this was important. But Jack, first, I would like for you to just tell us a little bit about you.
Well, my name is Jack McCabe, and I grew up in Chicago and lived there for most of my life, there in the suburbs of Chicago, until we retired in 2016 and moved down to North Carolina. Went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, joined the Army 2 days after I turned 18. Spent 3 full years in the Army, no early outs for me. After I got out, I went to school and received an associate degree in electronics engineering. Went to work in Motorola. Then I went to work at my wife's parents' business, which I eventually bought. And all the while I was going to night school, and finally received my bachelor's degree when I was 30 years old. And sold that business after 20 years and went into real estate to help my wife, who had been in real estate for quite a while at that point, and did that for 20 years and then retired and moved down here. I started writing this book when I was still in Chicago and finished it really in 2017. And it took me about 3 years to do, with my interviews and with all the edits and whatnot that I went through. And Pat did a great job helping me with the editing on this one. So, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, very good. Well, we truly appreciate your time and all of the service that you have given, not only to our country, but to our vets as well. I know that you've been volunteering for some time and supporting vets, and you've certainly been a tremendous help to me personally in helping my dad.
Well, thank you. And I did a lot of volunteer work. I didn't even mention that, but I did a number of years of volunteer work with veterans in various organizations and with the VA. So I kind of retired from that really the September before COVID hit. And then, of course, I would have been forcefully retired anyways throughout COVID. But fortunately, hopefully that's all behind us now.
Fortunately, yes. And we do hope. I feel like I should make some kind of sign to make sure that is absolutely behind us. Just to let everyone know just kind of why I thought that this was important. My father is a Vietnam veteran. He served in the 128th Assault Helicopter Company in Phu Loy, Vietnam from 1970 to 1971. And like many of you, I'm guessing, I really didn't know anything about my father's service. I knew he was in the Army. I knew he'd gone to Vietnam, and something about a helicopter. And really after that, I couldn't tell you. It wasn't something that was discussed in our home. If I would ask a question, usually my mother would kind of shush me, or she would intervene in some way. And so 2 summers ago, my dad started to have some health problems. And after much urging by my mother and myself, he finally went and signed up to receive his VA healthcare benefits, because the 50 years prior, since he had left Vietnam, he wanted no part of it. He wouldn't hear of the VA. He didn't want anything that they had to offer him. It was usually came with some kind of expletive. He doesn't trust them. And that's probably a way that a lot of Vietnam veterans feel, or at least the ones that I have visited with, a lot of them have that some degree of mistrust, I guess, for the VA. And so we thought, okay, Dad, you need to start applying for some disability benefits, because we started to see more and more health conditions. And the more I read and the more my mom visited with other people that were their age and maybe the spouses of other vets, their husbands were having similar maybe issues to my dad. So he applied for healthcare benefits. And when we went to do his disability claim for PTSD, that's when I started digging into his service. And he had spent 50 years trying to forget. And now the VA wanted him to regurgitate everything: names, dates, times, places. And he didn't know. He didn't have any idea. He knew one name, and that was Dennis Meduna. And that was his best friend that was killed in action on June 1st in 1971. And I found on Together We Served a memorial page, and I traced that memorial page back to the person who created it, and it was Jack McCabe. And that's how Jack and I became acquainted, because I then contacted Jack, not having any idea that he had written this book. And Jack was so kind to give me a little bit of information and point me in the right direction to try, to find some information about my dad's service. And so I felt like I needed to purchase Jack's book, because he had been so kind to help me. I wanted to do that, to support him like he had supported me. And so I dug in and started reading. And about 3 chapters into the book, I just felt like the world had fallen on me. I really did. And I kept seeing this pattern. Oh, my dad kind of says that. My dad acts like that. My dad has much that same attitude. He's had these same issues. He kind of feels the same way. My childhood kind of mirrored that of so-and-so, and at that point, even after I was a healthcare professional for 15 years, I didn't fully understand PTSD. I didn't understand how it affected really every nook and cranny and corner of my family and our lives, and my dad's life, my mother's life, my parents' marriage, my childhood, until I read this book. And Jack, tell me, in that same vein, were people like myself, were we really the target audience when you wrote the book? Or was there someone else really that was kind of your target that you had in mind?
Well, when I first started even thinking about this, I started comparing my service to my dad's. And my father was a World War II vet. He spent 2 years in the Pacific. And after I came home from Vietnam, my father and I would get together on Friday after work or after school for me. And we would do a couple of depth charges, which my dad called them, which is like a Boilermaker. We'd drop a shot of whiskey and a beer and we'd drink it. We wouldn't chug it, we'd sip them. And we would start to talk. And he would talk about his experiences coming home from World War II. And every time he told me about it, there was a sparkle in his eye, and you could see that he was back there. And he never really asked me about my experiences. And my experiences were very different from his. So I thought a lot about this over the years. And I thought it would be interesting to write about the different homecoming experiences of World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam veterans. And to be honest, I never spoke in depth to a Korean War veteran. So I started to look for World War II veterans to talk to about these experiences. And I found some, and they were rapidly leaving us. But I found some and I began to interview them, and I realized right away that they were too far removed from the experience to really get into the emotion of it and how they felt about it. They're able to tell you dates and places. Yes, I came home here, I went through New York, or I went through San Francisco, but it really, there was something lacking there. And so I decided to write about something I knew, which was Vietnam veterans. Now, when I started to write about this, I had no idea what my goal was. I was just writing about different experiences of GIs coming home, you know, and one thing I did want to do was talk to people of all branches of the service, including women. I wanted to talk to donut dollies, which were Red Cross workers who came around and shared a little bit of home to the troops. And I also wanted to talk to some Australians. And as I started to look for vets, I started to find them. And, you know, everybody's out there, you just have to look for them. And so I started talking to them, and it was very interesting. I wanted to tell their stories, basically. And I just wanted to talk about what their experiences was coming home. And as I started to delve into it, there was really three aspects of this that I kept coming up with. One was the actual experience of coming home, leaving Vietnam, coming to the United States, and what that was like, if they encountered any hostility or if they just had a great homecoming or what. I mean, it was just, that was one part. The second part was how they were treated by their friends, their family. How did they feel their reception was at home? How hard was it to acclimate to society? How hard was it to fit in? Were they accepted in the VFW and the American Legion? And in many cases, people ran into friends that they knew in high school who said, "Oh, I haven't seen you around in a while. Where you been?" And they'd been gone a year. And they had no idea. And the third aspect that I kept coming up with was how they are now. Have they moved on? Have they been able to really adjust to society? How many divorces have there been? How many Agent Orange issues, PTSD issues, substance abuse, anger issues? And there was a lot of this. There was especially a lot of anger issues. Most everybody that was universal had dealt with anger issues. And so that was kind of what the goal was, and what the goal morphed into, I should say. Because like I say, when I first started talking to people about this, I really had no goal. I mean, I just was trying to gather experiences. And as it happened that, you know, I was finding out all kinds of things that I knew about myself, and all these experiences that were kind of common threads, regardless of what branch of service you were in, regardless if you were Australian, and regardless if you were a donut dolly. And, you know, I don't want to get off topic, but the donut dollies were probably the most interesting people that I interviewed. You know, they were all volunteers. They were all college educated women who came over there and went around and played games with the troops and whatnot. And they suffer a lot. They suffer a lot of PTSD issues and Agent Orange issues, and they get no help from the government at all, nor do they get help from the Red Cross. So they're really, you know, kind of the lost veterans of Vietnam amongst a generation of lost veterans. But that's kind of where I started to go with that. You know, it was so different for the World War II vets versus the Vietnam vets. And there again, I go back to my dad's experiences because I know them more than anyone else's. And after 2 years in the Pacific, he spent a month on occupation duty in Japan. And then he and all the troops he served with for the last 2 years were on a boat for 2 weeks going across the Pacific home. Well, they had a lot of time to sort things out. They had a lot of time to talk about things. They had a lot about to deal with the things that they'd done and the things they'd seen. And they had time to talk about their plans for the future or their fear of the future, because they've been gone a long time. They didn't even know if their marriage was going to be there or if they had one. But when they arrived in San Francisco, there was confetti thrown from the Golden Gate Bridge. There was a band playing dockside. They went into San Francisco and they couldn't buy a drink. Everybody was buying them drinks. And for us, it was different. For us, it was very different. For us, you were called in the orderly room. The first sergeant said, "Here's your orders. You can go home now." And that was it. And things were no different, personally, when I left than when I got there. It was the same thing. And I kept asking myself, and at the time when I finally came home after 19 months, I was 20 years old. And I kept asking myself, what just happened? What just happened? When I left Vietnam, finally the second time, I was out in base defense at a base there, and I was out in a hole with my rifle and my helmet, and we didn't have a lot. It was May of '72. We didn't have a lot of people to defend the base, so we had to move the perimeter in. So the runway was actually outside of the perimeter. And I sat there in my foxhole with my rifle, and I watched in the distance a firefight. And I could see the green and orange tracers going back and forth, occasional flash of a grenade. I couldn't hear it. It was too far away. But in the morning, I got up and turned in my rifle, my helmet, and my flares, changed my clothes, got on a helicopter, flew to Townsend that afternoon. I got on a plane to fly home. And 3 days later, I was in my dad's living room. And the whole thing just seemed, I don't know, it was hard for me to explain. I know that when I left, I was very angry. Not at anything in specific. I can't remember anything I was angry at, but I was angry. And I stayed angry for a long time. Until 2013, when we had a reunion at the Wall. And then I blew up twice at my wife, and for something stupid that means nothing. And I realized I needed to talk to somebody. So I went to the VA. And unfortunately, so many vets have dealt with this anger for so long, and the families don't understand it. They don't know where it's coming from. They think it's directed at them, and it's not. And fortunately, there are ways to help now. When I went to the VA in 1990 for my hearing, because like your dad's, Crystal's hearing is shot from the helicopters. And they wouldn't even give me hearing aids back then. And I swear I was never going back to the VA for anything. Well, when I finally did go back in 2013, it was a different VA. And so I think that one of the most important things to come out of the book is that for people to have an understanding of what happened to people over there, how they were treated when they came home, and what they're like now, and the struggles that they've dealt with their whole life. When you read it, you see multiple divorces and multiple alcoholism and anger issues and PTSD and all kinds of issues that are typical. And they had these issues. They had these issues in World War II and in Korea. I've read a lot of articles. I've read a lot of clinical reports that the PTSD issues have affected the Vietnam generation more than any of the other ones. And they credit that with the way they dealt with this when they came home. You know, in World War II, you came home, the whole nation was in the war. You know, it wasn't just those who were drafted and those who enlisted. Everybody was. Everybody was on ration cards. Everybody was working in defense plants. Everybody was growing victory gardens. Everybody was in on it together. Whereas Vietnam, only a small percentage of people were really involved in that war. And if you had the right draft number, you didn't get drafted. But the guy you went to high school with got drafted. You know, but the whole attitude on Vietnam had changed since the time we first got in there. I graduated from high school in 1969, and the local junior college was Triton Junior College. And the phrase in my high school was Triton's better than fighting. And everybody wanted to go to get, you know, try to get student deferments so they wouldn't have to go to Vietnam. So that's kind of where I wound up going with this book.
Tell me about in your own family. You mentioned to me when we were kind of talking and visiting about planning our meeting this afternoon about your daughter. What does your daughter think?
Well, that was interesting. We visited my daughter in New Jersey for our granddaughter's second birthday, and God bless, we were so lucky to have grandchildren at this stage in our life because we never thought we were going to have any. And we were talking, I don't even remember how this subject came up, but we were talking about family and raising the kids and whatnot. And, you know, and I said, well, I was overprotective. I was, you know, and of course I had anger issues, and everyone knew that, and Pat will tell you that. And my daughter said, well, Dad, you know, I think you did really good considering you were dealing with PTSD symptoms at the time. And it surprised me, it shocked me, to be honest with you, because I didn't think that, you know. I mean, and that's part of the thing that you have to understand if you have a parent who has these issues. They don't think there's anything wrong with them. This is just the way life is. They think everything is normal, and it's not normal. It's not. When you compare it to a family where somebody hasn't been involved in this stuff, it's not normal. And but that's the only thing they know. So I think it's easy for family members to misconstrue what the symptoms that they're exhibiting, because in reality, it is the symptoms that they're exhibiting. You know, the anger issues and substance abuse, and, you know, the inability to get close to someone, and the edginess, and, you know, that just goes on and on and on.
And let's just be clear. PTSD can affect any person. It can result from any kind of traumatic event in someone's life. It could be a house fire. It could be you know, the death of a loved one. But I think the more that I started to recognize, I think the signs, the symptoms, I started to see, I think, more people. I work in end of life care. I work in hospice care. And I heard just, you know, chatter out here in the office. We had a patient who was younger than me, and they had admitted him for alcoholic cirrhosis. Now, and immediately my antenna kind of went up, because I think, what, you know, in the life of a healthy mid-30s type person, you know, would have you at the point where you had alcoholic cirrhosis to the point that you needed end of life care at that point in your life. Come to find out, there were some traumatic. He was not a veteran, but that was my first question. Is he a vet? And they said, no, he's not a vet, but yeah, you're spot on. He's got some stuff going on, you know, and that's what it was. So I think for us on this side as children, it's important to note that it's not just veterans. It's not. It can be even us, you know, kind of a secondary type PTSD from things that maybe happened in our childhood. Now, considering that my dad, you know, does have PTSD, he gets VA disability for his PTSD. I still had a great childhood. Don't get me wrong. My dad was wonderful. But looking back, I see it. I don't know, Jack, you can tell me, Larry, Mr. Vic, you guys can chime in. But my parents have been married for 50 years. My mother goes before my dad and prepares him for every situation. She lays his clothes out for him. She will tell him, you know, Charles, there's somebody behind you. You know, so-and-so is going on over here. You know, the buffet line is to your right. Because when he gets in a situation that he doesn't anticipate, sometimes that's a trigger. That's a trigger. I don't know if you, you know, if in your own relationships, if you've experienced that same thing with your family trying to intervene for you, trying to help you cope, you know, every day. But that's something that, and my husband noted that. He said, because my dad will sit in his recliner and say, Sissy, I'll take a glass of tea. Well, that's fine. I certainly don't mind. I would do anything for my dad. But he doesn't do much of anything for himself because we've conditioned him. You stay there where you feel safe, where you feel comfortable. Anything that you need, we will bring it right to you. We'll bring it right to you. Now, he took care of us, don't get me wrong. But we've tried very hard to intervene on his behalf to try to avoid any kind of trigger for him.
Sure.
Because he gets embarrassed. When one of those triggers happens, he gets embarrassed. And any man, I know even my husband, something happens, he gets embarrassed. What's the second thing that comes after getting embarrassed? He's mad. And I think they're embarrassed because they are embarrassed because, you know, whatever. I remember we were sitting on the deck at my parents' lake house one time and watching a storm come in over the lake. And lightning struck an electrical transformer in the neighborhood. And my dad just about turned the patio table over. The tea glasses spilled, the tea went everywhere. And my son was about 3 and he said, why he do that? Then dad was embarrassed and he was mad. He stomps off and goes in the house and slams the door.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a silly, a simple trigger, we think.
Right.
But we haven't experienced that to the level that you guys have. We've not experienced what you have. Do you follow that trail, Jack? Can you relate to that in some way?
Well, I think it has Pat, that one.
Right. Miss Pat, can you relate?
Yes, definitely. 4th of July was a real issue, can still be an issue. Fireworks.
Yeah, if I know they're coming, it's okay. But if it surprises me, it's not.
Yeah.
And like you say, PTSD can come from many issues. Can come from sexual trauma. It can come from childhood trauma, you know, in an abusive household. It can come from so many things. And when I think about some of the things, you know, in my life that didn't affect me as much as I thought it would. I remember a girl in my 2nd grade class was hit by a car and she was killed. And we happened on the scene right after it happened on our bikes. And she was laying in the street and the woman that hit her was covering her with blankets and sobbing uncontrollably, and there was blood all over the street. Now, I don't know if that caused any effect in me, but I remember it to this day as clear as it happened when I was in 2nd grade. So there's a lot of issues that do happen and in life. And I think that if you get you know, the help you need when it happens, you for the most part, you can be okay. You know, the Vietnam stuff, the VA didn't even recognize it until how many years later, 40 years later. I mean, they didn't even recognize it. So they didn't treat people for it. They didn't, and so people went there and they had a bad experience with the VA and never went back. And, you know, I think Vietnam vets in general have a great distrust of the government. You know, they told us that Agent Orange only killed plants, and now we're all dying from it. And, you know, it should have been obvious to us, but we were too young and stupid, I guess, to figure if it killed everything else, it probably wasn't good for us. But there's nothing we can do about it anyway. But there's a big distrust of government among Vietnam veterans, just because we've been lied to so much. And, you know, I hope that, I had hoped, and maybe it has, that this book would be read by some of the people who protested and some of the people who treated us poorly. And not all the protesters treated us poorly. But I would like for them to, you know, to have read that. You know, when Ken Burns came out with the series, there was, in the very end, there was a woman who was interviewed on there who said that she had been one of the protesters and she felt really sorry for the names she called us. And I contacted her because I thought, no, this is an interesting person. And I got a hold of her, and we didn't chat much, but we did. And I just told her I really appreciated what she said, even though it was 50 years late, but I appreciated it. And I thanked her for saying that and feeling that way. And she said she was really sorry for what she did. And I believed her. So, you know, that it's both sides now on this that are coming to grips with Vietnam. And unfortunately, by the time we all figure it out, we'll probably all be dead. But, you know, there's not much we can do about that. Time moves on. But the Vietnam veterans, it's not just the PTSD, it's the Agent Orange issues. They have said that, I have read that they say that it will take 7 generations to purge that from our system. And when you think about not just the Vietnam veterans, but our generations to come, and all the people in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos that were deluged with this stuff, the Australians and our other allies who were there, you know, this is an awful lot of sick people out there from this stuff. And a lot of illnesses that, you know, that are affecting everybody too. And that's causing a lot of additional anger on top of it. Because we don't want to die at a young age. You know, I looked for people that I served with, and I found a lot of them that served in my company in the years, and an awful lot of them had died. And the average age at death was 55. So wow. Agent Orange is prevalent out there. And, you know, that's a big thing also that we have to keep in mind.
Sure. Okay, we have a question here, Jack, in the chat. And I'm not sure who it's from because it looks like they're logged in as iPhone, but thank you for your question. If anyone else has a question, feel free to just unmute and ask, or you can feel free to put that in the chat. But the question is, and I'm interested to hear this answer. This is a great question because even in the book, if you guys by chance have not read it, there are even famous people here. And having grown up here in Texas, I know, Jack, that you had interviewed Steve Cannelly for your book, and he played on Dallas. I mean, for me, that was like growing up. I mean, that's about as famous as you can get playing on Dallas. But the question is there any story of all of the people that you interviewed that really stands out or affected you more than others?
Oh, well, like I said, the donut dollies are really, my favorite stories.
You're muted.
And, Steve's was a good story. Tucker Smallwood, I found, was a very good story. And Tucker was an actor also. And he had been an advisor, and he was wounded. He was hit in the neck with a piece of shrapnel the size of a match head. And he was able to put pressure on it, severed an artery until he got in there. And the doctors said, he's going to be gone, forget him. And one doctor, and he still had that information, said, no, I'm not going to let this guy go. And he was able to stop the bleeding and bring him back. And he has suffered a lot of PTSD issues that he didn't come to grips with for many years until there was a welcome home parade in New York. And then, then all of a sudden he came out of the veteran closet, and was able to be proud of his service. Whereas before, I think a lot of people, I think a lot of Vietnam veterans were not real proud of their service. We weren't ashamed of it, but we didn't go around wearing it on our sleeve like we do now. We didn't have our Vietnam veteran caps and all the rest of that stuff. We didn't do it. You didn't know somebody was a Vietnam veteran unless you asked them. But now, I think right now we're coming to realize, hey, the government screwed us and screwed the whole thing over, but it wasn't our fault. And we have nothing to be ashamed of. We have things to be proud of, at least for each other.
Sure. I remember, I want to say it was the early 90s. I was in junior high school, and they built a veterans memorial in the small town where I grew up here in Texas. And so my mother and I were so proud. We paid however much it was to have my dad's name put on the monument where it was appropriate. And our student council at school, we all carried flags, and we were part of the dedication ceremony, and I was so proud. And so I thought in my mind that maybe that evening when my parents got home from work and my dad came home from work, maybe we could go back, and I could show him where his name was, because I had showed my classmates, my friends, that's my dad. I was so proud. That's my dad. To this day, he hasn't been to see it. Wouldn't go, doesn't want any part of it, wouldn't see it, doesn't. And that was tough. It was really tough for me as a child to understand why he wasn't proud of himself like I was proud of him.
Sure. Well, a lot of veterans feel the same, not the same, but were very reluctant to go to the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. And I think if there is ever been a healing memorial, that is one. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. It's a place for veterans to finally go and grieve for their friends. And you don't have close friends like those you had in Vietnam. You don't have close friends like that. You never will again. But to go there and to visit the wall and see all these names, it takes your breath away. It makes it real, is what it does. And I understand what your dad's saying about his name on a brick or whatever it was on. But he'll come around. He'll go see it one day, I'm sure.
Larry Murley had a comment. He said, on the subject of fireworks, twice a year, 4th of July and New Year's Eve, I leave my home and drive somewhere where there are none. It's just one of those things that many vets must deal with.
Yeah.
And in the neighborhood where my family and my parents live, we live close, there is a shooting range that belongs to the sheriff's department.
Me too.
And you too, Larry? Okay. And they shoot automatic weapons. They the fire department trains there. They have some training, facilities and whatever, and it's on a berm that's on the backside of our landfill, like a landfill. And although we're not really close to it, we can still hear that sound.
Mhm.
And even the automatic weapons, we can hear that at our house. To kind of compound things, our county airport, we are just kind of behind it as the crow flies. And so we are in just a natural travel pattern, I suppose, for military aircraft that travel from Fort Polk in Louisiana to Fort Hood. And so they fuel a lot of times at our county airport. So we get the sounds from not only the sheriff's department shooting range, which all regional law enforcement use that facility, but also the airport going across. And I think sometimes I'm thankful in that regard that Dad doesn't hear well. I don't know if he will ever not be able to pick up the rotor slap from a Huey. I don't know if ever he will, not be able to hear that or not be able to react. But the shooting, it concerns me for him sometimes.
Well, we have across the ridge behind us here, there's some farmers who have their own little shooting range over there. And Pat will tell you that, they have AR-15s, and once they start shooting Sunday morning, who goes shooting on Sunday morning? But they do. And it just bothers me. It just makes me nervous, makes me edgy. I don't like hearing. Now, I can go to a shooting range and I can shoot and I can be around them when they're shooting, but to hear it in the distance out of the blue, it's bothersome.
Right.
When you mentioned that the people came back from Vietnam, my experience was a whole lot different.
Tell us about it, Mr. Vic.
Well, when I came back, I went to the VA, and I can't remember everything that he told me, but the one thing I remembered him telling me was, talk about it, let it out, because not only will that help you, but people are interested. People are curious and want to hear your side of the story.
Mhm.
And I was in Vietnam in '67 and '68, and I was an artillery FO, but I was attached to the 1st and the 6th Infantry. So I mean, I had, for all practical purposes, I was infantry.
Mhm.
But when I talk about then I didn't go back to the VA for anything until it had to have been 10 or 15 years later. And I finally went back to the VA, to Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I'll tell you, I can't say enough about those people in the VA. I've been helped. I've had nothing but good experiences. I've had, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
They've been very helpful with me. I had a bad case of PTSD when I came back, and I was angry, but with the help of those people at the VA, I was kind of shown how to control that anger, how to deal with it. And everybody that comes back from Vietnam is going to have demons. I mean, there's no way around it. But I found that in talking to different vets, no matter who they are, everyone's experience in Vietnam was different.
Yeah.
It just depended on where you were, what time you were there, and what you were doing. And in our group, I was in the AmeriCal division,
Mhm.
and the AmeriCal division has a reunion every year, and every year all the units from the AmeriCal division were invited to it. And every year it's always in a different state. So they have it all over the place. But I find out in talking to some of the guys that are still left, I talked about, we talk about, our different experiences and how we're getting along and how we're dealing with different, different things. And I found out that if you talk about it, let it out, it's that demon, all of a sudden you put that demon on the table and he's not so ugly anymore.
Right.
But like I said, the VA has been really good to me. I was awarded the Silver Star in Vietnam. And a lot of the guys, I used to go to the wall every year. And a lot of the names that are on that wall, I know who they are. But I just think that it was a good experience, but it was a bad experience too. And when I got back from Vietnam, I found out that those people at the airport that were greeting us when we got off that plane down that walkway, that bothered me. And as soon as I got back to the airport, I remember I changed into civilian clothes, and I actually threw my whole duffel bag, everything, in the trash right there at the airport. But there's one thing that I do, and I do it religiously, is I wear my hat. And I've worn that hat ever since I came back, because I was proud of the unit that I served with.
Right.
And the guys that I served with. And I was in a bar about, it must have been 7 or 8 years ago. And I remember I was sitting there, and there was a kid sitting at the bar. He must have been 23, 24 years old, 25 maybe. And he saw my hat, and he said, you were a Vietnam vet. And I said, yeah. And he says, when were you there? And I looked at him and I said, last night. Because what else are you going to say?
Yeah.
And of course the conversation went on from there. But when you talk about PTSD, I can remember PTSD. I can remember the first operation we went on when I got to Vietnam. We got there, and 2 days later we were out in the jungle, and we were on one of the search and destroy missions, and I was scared to death. I was shaking in my boots, because I just thought, oh my God, somebody's going to shoot me. We got to this village out there in the middle of no place, little village. And we started sweeping through that village because it was a suspected VC area. We started sweeping through the village, and I got to tell you, I can't remember the last time I was that scared. And off to my right, I heard something, and it was a bush or something, or some weeds or something that was. Anyway, I remember I had my rifle on full automatic, and I just swung that direction and squeezed off the rounds. And it was a little girl that jumped out, that fell out of that bush. A little girl. She must have been 8, maybe 9 years old, maybe 10. And that always bothered me. I mean, she was just scared. She was just hiding. Here comes all these ugly guys coming through their home. And she was just scared. She was just looking for a place to hide. And that always bothered me, because I thought, and I've got grandkids that are that age.
Yeah.
And that was the one part of that PTSD thing that the VA helped me through. And I'm still going to the VA. And like I said before, I can't say enough about the VA, because they have just been super with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, God bless you. Welcome home.
Oh, and the other thing, the VFW, I've never joined a VFW or an American Legion. When I first got back from Vietnam, I went to a VFW, and there was some, I don't know if they were Korean or if they were World War II vets, but they said that they claimed that we were probably just nothing but drug addicts, and we didn't know what real combat was. And I thought, it's a hell of a thing to say,
Yeah.
And I told the one guy, I told him, I said, you had a front line. Your enemy had a uniform. You knew who he was. I did, and I said, we didn't have a front line. Where we were standing was the front line. And I left my beer on the bar, and I just walked out and never went back.
I've heard that before.
And donut dollies, our donut dollies, I can remember the Red Cross donut dollies, you know, being them nice looking girls and everything, you know, I mean, they were, you know, wearing them short skirts and you know what I mean? And after coming out of the jungle, they look pretty nice. But you know who I remember the most? And they were sitting there and they were on the pad, on the helipads, and they'd ask, you know, you got a dime for the coffee, a dime for the donut, and you know, if you got that, you can put it in the cup or just help yourself. If you don't, well, we didn't have any money. We were out in the jungle for 3 weeks, and we didn't, you know, nothing was in our pockets. But the donut dollies from the Salvation Army never asked for a nickel. So of course they had the donation cup out there, but they never acknowledged it. And they offered you a cup of coffee and a donut, and God bless you. It's never a mention. So I always remember the Salvation Army gals out there.
Hmm.
That was my experience.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vic, for sharing with us. Welcome home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry, you have a comment there?
On what Vic was saying there, I always challenge everybody, all the vets, I challenge them to write this stuff down. Start with your earliest memory going to Vietnam, write it all down as much as you can remember. And it's amazing when you get these demons out in the daylight, they're not near as fearsome. They're not near as strong. It weakens them. And I can say that from my own personal experience. You write it down. You know, if nothing else, it's something your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren down the road are going to relish. They're going to love to hear this. So that is my challenge to everybody.
That's great, Larry.
In my experience with my dad, that's been true. I had to help him try to remember, try to find dates, times, places, and we sat at my kitchen island for every evening when I got home from work, and we would both just sob, and he would tell me things that happened. And it seems not only did that, I mean, I was always kind of a daddy's girl. I was an only child, but that really brought my dad and I even closer together, I should say. And it seems like since that time, that summer, 2 summers ago, there's less tension, I guess, there. It's like it's out in the open. It's not a secret that he's keeping anymore. And I agree with that. He seems more at ease.
Yes.
Since
That's
that
great,
time.
Crystal. That's great.
I've got 4 kids, and all 4 of my kids know every one of my stories. I've told them all, and it was kind of my way of explaining my odd behavior at times.
Yeah.
I still don't like crowds, and I don't feel good in crowds. I'm not very social when I get in a crowd, but the kids know, and I still, when I'm sitting in a restaurant or a place where there's a lot of people, I like to sit with my back to the wall.
Yeah.
Where there's nobody behind me. I still don't like anybody behind me, but it's little by little, it's coming around. It's happening. So
That's great.
And would you guys all agree that
my kids know as much about it as I can, you know, and I found that it's helpful.
would you guys all agree that it's never too late to get help or get treatment?
Definitely.
Yeah.
No,
Definitely.
it's not. It's very helpful. They're
for
trained
anybody.
individuals. You know, they know how to get them. You know, to get that thing. Like I said, everybody has their demons, but if you can get that demon out on the table and recognize that demon, I found out that demon doesn't have any teeth. You know what I mean? He's there, but you can deal with them.
Yep.
And that's with any kind of trauma someone
for
may
sure.
be experiencing, not just military and war, because we got a whole new generation of military that are going to be dealing with the same thing right now. And you have the suicide rates. And back in 2015, the VA did a study on veteran suicide, and that's where they came up with the 22 a day. And 75% of those at that time were Vietnam veterans. And that was a VA statistic. That was in 2015. So, it's never too late. And no matter what kind of trauma you may have been subjected to, whether your house burned down or whether someone attacked you or you were in the military or whatever, it's never too late. And there's a lot of good organizations out there. If you're not happy with the VA, you go to the vet centers, which a lot of people have found the vet centers are better than the VA because they're vets. And, they sit and talk to you. But there's a lot of good volunteer organizations. There's a lot of good organizations to help people of all types with trauma.
Sure. And I will say about the VFW, I can't speak for American Legion, but I've gotten involved with the VFW auxiliary here where we live in Lufkin. And I invited my dad. He went, actually, I asked him, number one, for his blessing to go and kind of see if that was something that I thought was a good organization, if they were doing good things for vets in our community and in our county. And, would I have his blessing if I wanted to participate? And he said, well, absolutely. And so I asked him to go with me to the very first meeting. And so he was, I think, the only male in the meeting. But he went, and that was a victory as far as I was concerned. He went, and he was able to talk to me about, yes, go and volunteer. And if it helps vets, that's a great thing. So I got involved, and it was something that I spoke with our post commander about the attitudes of Vietnam veterans toward the VFW after a lot being shunned when they returned and wanted to participate in a post. And so my parents went with me to a fundraiser that we had there at the post. And I showed my dad this, there were paintings on the wall. Is it Joe Klein? I think is the one that does the
aviation. Yeah.
Yes. And there were 4 paintings of Joe Klein's, helicopter artwork there. And that was the first thing that Dad's eye went to. And he said, well, I guess if these paintings are here, that must mean that they're okay with us. He felt kind of like, okay, that was something that he related to. And so since I started to visit with Commander and our auxiliary president about trying to make sure that all veterans in our community know that they are welcome there, even if they're not VFW specifically, but they are welcome there. We want that to be a resource, for vets in our community, all vets, period. They have renamed our cafe, and we are working on redecorating the cafe, but they have renamed it the Welcome Home Grill.
Nice.
To make sure that the Vietnam era veterans know that they have a place there and they are honored there and they're always welcome there.
That's wonderful.
That's great. By the way, Crystal, tell your dad I have a couple of Joe Klein's paintings modified for the 128th hanging in my house here.
I actually ordered one for him, and my mother, I think she might have wanted to wring my neck because I had it, for him, and it's, painted up like his, he couldn't tell me a whole lot about his experiences, but he could name Dennis Meduna, and he could tell me the tail numbers of all the aircraft that he worked on, that he flew on. And so one of them is correct for 673. That was the aircraft that he flew on the majority of the time. So it is 673 with the correct tail number.
That's great.
But anyway, he wanted to hang it right by the front door So it's in the living room right by the front door because he wanted to see it from his chair. And I never dreamed that he would want to hang that in the living room. I thought maybe down the hallway or whatever. And so my mother kind of is like, maybe I should have talked with her about that first. But, okay, we've got a couple of other questions here, Jack, if you've still got some time with us.
Okay.
Katie says, in speaking with allies of ours that were Vietnam veterans, did they have the same experience with negative receptions and lack of help when they returned to their own countries? Are their experiences similar to United States veterans?
The Australians were really the only other allies I spoke with, had the same experience. There was a large anti-war movement there, and they were welcomed by protesters. When they came back in mass and units, and they marched them through the streets of Melbourne, I think it was. And one guy told me somebody threw a plastic bag of red paint and hit the guy in front of them. And, so they had their issues. As far as their medical issues, they're ahead of us. They recognized Agent Orange issues long before we did. We're dealing right now with the Blue Water Navy as far as Agent Orange goes. The Australians have found a higher incidence of Agent Orange related illnesses in their Blue Water Navy than those who served on the ground in Vietnam. Yeah. And the reason being is because all of this was sprayed. It went in the rivers carried it out to the South China Sea, where their Navy would take in the water and desalinate it. And when you desalinate seawater, it concentrates whatever chemicals are in it, and they would cook in it, bathe in it, shower in it, wash their clothes in it. So they have a much higher instance of illnesses in their Blue Water Navy than those who were on the ground. There's a very interesting bunch of studies on that with the Australians. And, but no, they were treated poorly when they came back. And of course, that's all changed now, like here. And, the Diggers are very proud of their service, no matter what anybody thinks. And like us, they're treated very well now. It's great.
That's great. That's great. And I have to say, of my father's care, he's gotten wonderful care from the VA. Mm-hmm. He doesn't get treatment for PTSD. He doesn't see a counselor or anything, but as far as health care, we couldn't ask for any better.
That's great.
Truly. And he goes to the DeBakey VA hospital in Houston. But they have done everything for him, and we're very pleased. He rides the bus. He and my mom don't like to drive in Houston, so they catch the bus here in Lufkin, and they ride 2 hours on the bus to the center. And the bus that takes them there is like a charter bus. It's a very, very nice bus, and it has absolutely been a blessing, 100%, because I can't tell you the days, that I wouldn't have been able to work. To take Dad there for his testing and things like that. And I'm so grateful. But that's something that I try to do as much as I can, is I put little snack bags together and I take them and give those out to the vets that are riding the bus and their spouses or their caregivers, whomever it may be, because some of the days when I would go to the VA with my dad, we caught the bus at 7, we got there at 9, and he may have an MRI, a CT scan, and then a visit with the physician in the cancer center. And we were really hoofing it to get back on the bus at 2 o'clock to catch it, to come back. And we didn't have time to eat. We didn't have time to eat anything. We didn't have time. We barely had time to just make a restroom stop before we had to run and get back on the bus. So we try to put together snack bags of little bottles of water and some peanut butter crackers and maybe a cookie or an apple or something like that, and pass them out to the veterans on the bus. Because great. That is a long day for a lot of them. Let's see, Jennifer says, thank you so much for sharing your stories. I recently have asked my dad some questions of his service, and he's opened up a bit these days. That's wonderful, Jennifer. truly. I hope
That's
that you'll
great.
continue to be able to do that. And Larry Murley says, I wrote a book about my time in Vietnam in 2014, mostly because it was such an unusual time as well as place. No one knew of Vietnam in 1962. I suffered from PTSD from 1962 to 1981. I didn't know what it was. I got lucky. Yes, I was angry and violent, all of these behaviors. Married 4 times, divorced 3. So thank you.
Welcome
for
home,
sharing
Larry.
that. Absolutely. Welcome home. Does anybody else have any questions for Jack? Or Jack, is there anything else that you have? Several of us here. Is there anything that you really want us to take away from this visit?
You know, I just want to thank you for doing this and raising awareness on some of the issues, because the issues that we have, the new vets are showing up having and have been for quite a while. And I think it's important that, you know, people recognize that. And if you talk to somebody who's a veteran of the Gulf Wars or Afghanistan, ask them how they're doing. And they may say, well, I'm hanging in there, or, you know, which means they need help. And if that's the case, do whatever you can do to get them into the VA. You know, if you have to, you know, you're retired, if you have to pick them up and drive them there, do it. Get them in the system. The sooner they get in the system, the better off it'll be for them, their family, and for everybody. And, you know, when I was doing a lot of volunteer work, I mean, that's a lot what we had to do, was to deal with the veterans who are having problems and try to help them with, you know, whatever it was that was bothering them, or just try to direct them to the place to get the help, which is an extremely important thing. And I think if you can do that, if you can direct them to that, I always keep a couple of VA cards on me, you know, for crisis line and things like this. And, you know, if I talk to somebody and they seem like they might need it, tell them to give them a call. When I was writing this, I received calls at 2 a.m. And Pat will tell you, I mean, there are a couple of people I talked to for hours, you know, talking them down off the ledge. I mean, they're seriously talking them down off the ledge. And, you know, and I think they're all okay now. I think they're all okay now. Unfortunately, one of the guys I interviewed for this book did commit suicide. And I couldn't get his story in the book because it was already finished. And I just mentioned it at the very end that he committed, because I could edit the very last part of it. But and the only reason it wasn't in there is because his wife didn't see the release. And she wrote me a letter saying, I'm so sorry, and this is what happened, and here's your release. And unfortunately, it was too late. I would have liked to include it because I think it would be an important story. So maybe if we do another one, you know, we'll put that in there. We'll see.
Sure. And that's something that I was so grateful for, me being 42 and finally learning about my dad's service. It was hard for me. I went through a period of depression, had to start on some meds to kind of help me through that period. I think we see our mothers and fathers, they raised us, you know, they fed us, they clothed us, they did everything for us. My parents, I'm blessed, and they did that. But to see my hero, my first love, my daddy, in my mind, and see him in that very, very vulnerable situation, where his spirit was broken, his heart was broken because of things that he did and things that he saw. It hurt me. It really hurt me. I can't imagine how those things hurt him. So for the sons and daughters who are meeting with us, just know that if by chance you have that same some of those same feelings. You're not the only one. As a matter of fact, my sister-in-law is a licensed clinical social worker, and she called me one morning and she said, well, I just wanted to check on you and see how you're doing. And I said, I'm on the side of the road. I'm on my way to work and I'm crying my eyes out and I have no idea why. And she said, oh, okay. She said, it's time to see your doctor. It's time to, so, if you're feeling that way, you're not alone. Talk about it. Shoot me a message. I'll be happy to talk anytime. But Jack, your book helped me to see that even as tough as that time was for me, it allowed me to see how incredibly blessed my family is. And it was in that way, it was very much a positive for me, because there are some stories in the book that really, they're heartbreaking. Really,
some of them are.
Truly they are. And it allowed me to see that although there were some tough times, things could always be so much worse, and I saw that we were very blessed.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for reading the book. I'm glad it helped you out. And I want to thank everybody for coming on here today. And I really appreciate it. God bless you all.
Sure. Katie, do you have anything that you'd like to close with?
Sure. I just wanted to say a sincere thanks to Jack for coming on and doing this. Crystal was the one that led me to your book, and it really resonated with me. All of the stories, my dad's always been my hero. He never talked about his wartime. And he started talking about it about 15 years ago. And just a little over 10 years ago, I started a local veterans event every year on Veterans Day in his honor. And so that's still happening to today, because these are the things that as sons and daughters we can do. Your generation is getting a little older, and we need to make sure that for generations to come, that we remember and that we honor you in the way that you deserve. And so hearing having that book come out that you did, and I hope everyone gets a chance to to read it and to really understand, and we all relate to, there's a story in that book that we all can relate to. And so just kind of seeing how everyone, how it affected everyone. I thank you so much for writing that book. And I thank you very much for coming on tonight and sharing your time with us, and answering our questions and everything. So for anyone that's on the call that's interested in the Sons and Daughters group, you can message myself, you can message Crystal, you can get us on the Facebook page. But another great thing that's happening right now is the Vietnam War Museum that we are set to open soon. Hopefully, COVID's put us a little bit behind, but we're going to honor all of these stories, the good and the bad ones, and and talk about the war in general, not just the U.S. Vietnam veterans. So so that's an exciting thing, and that you can Google National Vietnam War Museum, and that's being built in Texas. It's built right now. The exhibits are just being built. So that's another great way that we can honor that, and the part of that as well. So I just thank you, Crystal, for taking the lead on this while I travel back to Minnesota from Connecticut with my seatbelt on.
Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you everyone for joining.
Yep, great
See you guys
session.
soon.
Great session.
Take
Okay.
care, everyone.
I would like very much to be a part of that, Katie.
We would love for you to, absolutely.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
And there are
Yeah, you can just
associate-
go ahead and message me, and we can find a way. Yeah, just message me on Facebook, or I'm the one that answers all of the emails. If you go on the site and hit the contact us form, that'll go directly to me.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone. Good night.
Wonderful. Good
Good
night.
night, everybody.
Good night.